This is a ProRevenge compilation of some of the best Karen ProRevenge stories. All information and timestamps are in the description below. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. You try to cut my team in half, so I outsourced your entire department. Posted by the Lightning Count 1. This tale takes place over the course of many months and resulted in over 150 layoffs, all to save 22 IT techs from losing their jobs. I learned a long time ago that no one cares about the IT team at our company. They see us as those useless employees always complaining about rules. We're a mortgage company, and those rules are the rules everyone follows to protect customer data privacy and to prevent theft. When your company suddenly loses 2 full payments for a house to some scammer in Nigeria and the FTC has questions for you, then it's time to change your policies. This meant cutting legacy access, revoking unnecessary access, and correctly coding job titles in Active Directory to prevent people from granting their own access. What this boiled down to was a meeting that I phoned into a year ago. This was one of those meetings where I did not need to be there. Budget meetings. In this meeting, the VP over the accounting department played a recording showing times when someone in the IT tech team provided subpar service. She tried using this as reason to fire half of the tech team. The trouble was that all of the people she played recordings of were already fired for giving terrible customer service. These people were replaced by 5-star techs who know what they're doing and give excellent customer service. This started the whole chain of events that led to last week. Since this meeting was every 2 months, VP has tried to use her position and influence to grow her team while shrinking ours. Every budget meeting, I would show up, and VP, who shall hence be referred to as Karen, would target my team. I would pull out the numbers and pull out the logs, showing how my team received a little over 3/4 of that team's call volume. I show how my team of 22 techs personally received more phone calls than every other inbound call employee by more than double the number. I show how, with the call volume we receive, we still maintain a 98% satisfaction rating. At the third budget meeting, the COO had been tired of hearing the same excuses and wanted hard data. He had a point. I was merely throwing out basic numbers without providing real data. Our company was in the middle of a budget crisis, and someone needed to be cut. These budget meetings were basically a way to defend our own department from the chopping block. Karen believed that the best defense was a good offense, and she was right, but not in the way she thought. When it became clear that the IT support team was on the chopping block, Karen starts to have her employees call into the tech center and have them make requests that she knows we can assist with, as that is handled by another company entirely. We're not able to transfer calls to an external line, so the only thing we can do is give the number to call and hang up. The negative CSATs start to flood in after this. Every single call from that team regarding a vendor's password reset gets a negative CSAT. Our approval rating tanked to 72% in one day, and I instantly took action. First, I contact a few of the users on recorded calls and ask them why they called the IT tech team when they know we are not capable of resetting the vendor's password. She replied that she was told it was policy to do that now. I asked why she left a negative satisfaction rating, and she said that those no longer count against the employee, that they're only used for macro metrics. I walked over to Karen's office and walked in. Hey Karen, why are you having your team call mine to reset the vendor's password? Karen looked confused and stated that she did no such thing. She said she will talk to her team and make sure that they call the correct number in the future. The calls did not stop. Now, a few of her team were calling in with personal machines that were not an asset of our company. They were wanting things done which would violate license agreements with Microsoft or Dell. Each of these were refused, and each of these were leaving negative CSAT. It became clear that Karen was trying to tank our stats before the next budget meeting. I let my boss know, and he just gives me a sly smile. The leash is off, sicker. This is an inside joke between us, as I am someone who is very detail-oriented when I'm focused. When you try and get my team fired because you want to grow your useless team, I'm very focused on you now. The first thing I do is enable call recording for every corporate employee as to not arouse her suspicions. Her team did not have call recording enabled because her team handles CDP on a daily basis. I pull a live call and listen in. This is employee with our company. May I have your account number or your name? The customer gives the name. Okay, I have your account pulled up. Are you wanting to make a payment? Customer says yes. Are you authorizing me to go ahead and make the withdrawal from the bank account we have on file? Customer agrees. Okay, payment is processing. You'll be notified in X days when it's complete. Your next due date is this date. The customer thanks her and he hangs up. The entire phone call was 1 minute 22 seconds. Short phone call, so I listened to another. Similar situation. I listen to another and get the same thing. I start seeing a pattern here, so I go through the rapidly building log and see that all of the phone calls are usually less than 1 minute and 20 seconds long. It takes well over an hour before an anomaly occurs, and I see a 5-minute phone call. The customer needed an extension, and the employee was authorized to give her a 30-day extension to avoid a late fee if she would make a double payment next month. The person on the phone agreed. At this point, I also turn on the CSAT for her team only. I expected a largely similar rating as my team. I was not prepared for the nearly instant 50% rating that steadily dropped. My boss comes over to my desk as he was getting the email notifications for the sub 75% CSAT rating and was flabbergasted at the sheer volume of negative reports. It's now clear that there is no choice but to examine this further. I assigned 4 people to review the negative calls from the other team and have them all. The amount of employees being downright rude to customers, not other employees, but paying customers over the phone, was shocking. The negative tones in their voice, the unwillingness to fully answer questions, the extreme lack of empathy, and the shocking lack of mute button use was too much. Then came another shocker. The number of customer-facing employees was ridiculous. 152 employees to handle roughly 30% more calls than my team of 22. I call the CIO. What do you got for me? I have something for you. It's incredibly evil, depressingly accurate, and can probably save the company a ridiculous amount of money. You know this is the second time you've said those exact words to me, right? Yep, but there's something I need to know first. I'm not currently authorized to know it, and I need to request it in a way that would not set off any red flags. What is that? The starting pay scale for all account employees. Tell me your plan. The next budget meeting was not a budget meeting. It was an IT Tech Defend Yourself meeting. The COO directed it and let Karen speak first. Karen pulled out the same stuff as before, calls upon calls to our group that were cherry-picked, as well as listing off dead zone times when we had people working but no one calling in. Then went on about how they could cut our group in half and hire more account employees to reduce the workflow. Instead of defending myself or my department, I played 4 of the short call recordings from Karen's department. I then pulled up the Excel sheet that was color-coded, showing how many phone calls each account rep received and the length of time they were on, each call, and the customer satisfaction rating. I explained the lack of high CSAT with my own little recording I like to call a failtage. It's a montage of fail and her team were the stars. Before you ask, I did put music to it. The recording starts off with an employee saying, "Yeah, I guess I can take your payment." Then goes straight into one where another customer accidentally gave the wrong bank account info and said, Don't use that one." The rep responded with, "Jeez, what is the actual account number?" It only got worse from there. This group was unmanaged for so long, they were filled with rude and useless employees. I then showed them a side-by-side comparison of each tech who received a call. I showed how my techs were receiving more than 4 times the number of calls per rep than her team was getting per day. I showed how we were all on the phone for well over 7 times the amount of time that her team was on the phone for, and I demonstrated how each tech had double or triple the satisfaction rating over all of her group. Half the room that was uninterested in the conversation were suddenly interested when I closed out my presentation. In short, I saw no reason to defend the IT team today, as I have successfully done so in every prior meeting. Since the last meeting, however, Karen has crossed the line and has had her team call mine in regards to the things we have no access to. I played the recording of me calling her minion. As you can see here, she directed her team to call mine and to leave bad satisfaction ratings on my guys because of it. I've since deleted those CSATs as they served no purpose whatsoever. I then pulled out my next flowchart. This is a monthly expense taken from the last 9 meetings that our company spends on IT and servicing departments. I look at the COO, who is looking at me intently. Before today, I was on the defensive as I saw no reason to attack another group, but it is clear to me now that my team has a target on its back. That is why I now show you this. It was a graph showing the starting pay scale for each IT and servicing employee code, as well as their average daily workflow. There was one glaring anomaly on this list. Account department had the highest starting pay scale with the least amount of work. So basically, in layman's terms, the account department can be reduced to 1/10 of its current size, and we can reduce the pay scale to a little over 1/2, as this department requires very little in the way of problem solving and critical thinking. I saw a few raised eyebrows, as well as one impressed smile from the CIO. The COO ushers everyone out of the room, except for me, my direct supervisor, and the CIO. He looked at me and said, "Continue. Further, we can cut this department entirely and outsource them instead of IT. Since this group merely takes payments and sometimes allows extensions, we don't have to worry too much about technical ability. Outside of simply using Windows, we can hire high schoolers if we wanted to." This got a laugh from the CIO. Karen was staring through the window with this smug grin on her face the entire time. Now for my final bit of this meeting, I'm going to play 2 cherry-picked phone calls. These are the 2 most technical phone calls that I could find from the last month for both departments. I play a call where a payment fails to process and the rep realizes she typed in the wrong number. I then play a call where it starts out with a user stating that her customer submitted a payment to the wrong CD. The tech breaks out into our procedure to prevent wire fraud. Thanks to the quick action of this tech, we were able to reverse the CD and save this customer from losing their down payment. The final masterful stroke was playing my final card. As you all know, Karen has been coming after my team for months. She has been grinding her axe against us because she, like everyone else, has made the mistake that we are incompetent, inept, and useless to the company. What she did not know was that I have all of the logs showing the truth. The smoke that she had been blowing for years is so thick that it is ridiculous. Her team is highly replaceable, and we both know that my team would require extensive training and effort to replace. The CIO spoke up. "With just 30 people, we can outsource her entire department and save the company millions a year. The next time we have a major IT issue, you'll be regretting outsourcing us." He then pointed to the graphs and flowchart brought by both myself and Karen. "Her team is useless." The next day, I watched in pure joy as a term request came in for Karen. It came in with the double asterisk indicator at the beginning, meaning this was a stealth term, to be done and coordinated with the person who will inform her of the termination. It's not actually double asterisk, I changed that here to protect identities. Over the next 2 months, the account team was shuttered. First, they came for anyone with disciplinary issues or attendance issues. Then, they laid off anyone who had been there a really long time. Then, the newest employees. The smart ones applied for other positions in the company or left before getting laid off. All the while, the calls for payments were slowly shunted to the call center in India. By the end of last week, we only have 4 domestic accounts people who take escalations that the India call center is not authorized to take. Do I feel guilty about being integral for 148 people being laid off? Yes, quite. But I know it was necessary to keep my job and my health insurance. Without my health insurance, I am a dead man. The entire reason why this happened, though, was because a division was slated to be cut and sent to India from the outset. Thanks to the actions of myself and my direct supervisor, we prevented it from being a sure thing that our team was going to get cut. On top of that, we cut out a festering wound in the company that was slowing it down and costing us money. My team has not been brought up in the budgetary meetings since. Read your darn emails, Karen. Posted by They Call Me Jaws. I used to work in an office. What kind of work isn't particularly important to the story, so just picture a basic office job. Every January, HR would send an email to all employees with the employee handbook. This included job descriptions, office policies, and so on. Every year since the PDF handbook had been established, it would be named with the year following it to establish it was different than the original and all the other years. Any changes would have updated next to the section in the table of contents so you could see what had changed from the previous year and familiarize yourself with anything new. Now with that background, we will introduce Karen. Karen had been with the company a pretty long time, about 10 years I believe. She was fine at her job, just fine. She would get things done, but not without making everyone else miserable in the process. She would ask questions that had already been answered and basically just waste everyone's time for fun. She was just plain nasty to people and tried as hard as she could to make everyone else stay far away from her. The worst thing about her was she always seemed to be looking for a fight or looking for a reason to complain. She had threatened lawsuits a few times over any small thing, but would always just get over it and drop it because she knew no laws had been broken and it would never go anywhere. She'd comment on how she should sue basically every business she ever went to because she could live off the settlement and retire early, over the smallest issues that you can imagine. She did her job and we never had a valid reason to fire her, especially knowing how lawsuit happy she was, so she stayed. Karen's job description, as per the handbook, called for a bachelor's degree. Karen did not have a bachelor's degree, but had been hired prior to that being a requirement, so she was grandfathered in. One day, a position above hers became open. A guy who we will call Terry had recently completed his master's degree after taking night classes for a few years, and since an internal promotion is typically better than an outside hire, he was chosen for the promotion. Terry had been at the company about 4.5 years and was well liked and great at his job. The new job required a master's degree in his job description, and him being a recent grad, it was a perfect fit, and everyone was happy for him. Everyone but Karen. Since she was constantly looking for something to sue about, she took it as a direct insult that she had not been considered for this promotion that she was not at all qualified for. She immediately cried discrimination and told our boss her lawyer would be in touch. We were all perplexed since it was very clear that this position required a master's degree, and given that she didn't even have a bachelor's degree, there's no way she could have been hired for the role. What we soon realized was that Karen had saved the original company handbook named Company Handbook and had not bothered to open or save any new editions that were sent in the following 8 years. She just assumed no changes had been made and that it was just sent every year to ensure that all employees had it. If she's bothered to open the file, she would have seen the sections that say updated in the table of contents. Since Karen cried lawsuit a lot, no one expected much of this since it was a ridiculous claim. But sure enough, Karen gives her resignation letter via email, and it is scathing about how she can't bear to work in such a discriminatory environment that would only promote men. When any of the higher-ups try to speak to her about this and clear up the confusion, she basically tells them to F off and to read the dang email. I don't know any more of an explanation. She basically goes full Karen. Not long after, a letter comes in from her lawyer asking for a settlement to avoid a discrimination case. What Karen hadn't realized was that our boss's sister-in-law owned a law firm. She didn't really take on clients herself anymore, and mostly just managed the other lawyers of her firm. She was basically semi-retired. What this meant was that she had plenty of time to review any letters from Karen's lawyer and advise us. Since Karen didn't bother to read any of the updated handbooks, she was unaware that this position had required a master's degree for many years now. I believe about 6 years. She supplied her lawyer with the original company handbook from 9 years ago, and he used that as a reference in his settlement demand. This was when we realized that she hadn't read any new handbooks in years. Since Karen rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, boss's sister-in-law decided to personally take on the case. Every letter Karen's lawyer sent, she sent back 3 times in length. Some of it wouldn't even really say anything, just wordiness, but it would certainly take Karen's lawyer a while to read it. And he did not come cheap. After several of these letters, they realize no settlement is going to happen, and they want to take it to court. It's a pretty cut and dry case. Boss's sister-in-law shows evidence that Karen has received all the updates via email. After the change was made and the handbook was sent out, HR even sent an email to Karen specifically letting her know that she was grandfathered in and doesn't need to worry, to which Karen replied, "Okay, thank you," confirming receipt of it. The best part was when boss's sister-in-law said that they couldn't break company rules to give Karen a job she was totally unqualified for while neglecting another employee who went above and beyond to get his master's degree to advance, as that would be unfair to all other employees. Karen now had a seriously huge bill from her lawyer for all of these letters and filing the case and so on. No job, no one she could list as a positive recommendation, and no degree. In the time she had been at the company, it had become industry standard to require a bachelor's degree, so she was effectively shut out of her career. It would also be hard to explain how you work somewhere for a decade and don't have a letter of recommendation from anyone there. If only she had read her darn emails. This one is good because the Karen is so confident that she's going to come out on top. And then she's like, I have everything backed up. And then it turns around, no, you've just been ignoring everything over the past 8 years, Karen. She's so confident and gets shut down. As always, way to go, OP. Taking down Queen Karen, president of the HOA. Posted by California Oldtimer. Okay, this happened years ago, 1985 to be exact. I was 45 when this happened and 81 now. So, after my second retirement, I started doing property management. I bought this 2,500 square foot luxury home with the sole intention of renting it out. Now, I didn't know how bad the HOA was, but when I became the owner, I soon found out. This all took place in 2 years' time. Karen would literally have a problem with everyone in the neighborhood. Trash cans left out? Fined. Loud music after 10 p.m.? Fined. Yard sale without permission? Fined. Removing dead plants and replanting without approval? You get fined. It went on and on like this. Now, the community could run for the HOA board, but the HOA board chose the president. 6 out of the 10 members on the board liked Karen, so she always kept her job. Her husband was in the medical field, so she made a lot of money. It got to a point, too, where she was called Queen Karen in the neighborhood and her dishing out those HOA fines. Now, I used to go in person to collect the rent because the people that rented my house were good friends of mine. I did this for months. So, I would park my car by the front of the garage. I and my friends were having some music on, but it wasn't that loud. Queen Karen came over driving her golf cart and said, "Excuse me? Yeah? You have to turn that music down. It's too loud." I told her that it was 8 p.m. and that the music that's even loud can be played until 10. She wasn't having it and demanded that I do so. Now, my friends and I kept the music going and we were enjoying ourselves. She proceeded to get angry and fined me. Now, most people will just take the abuse and pay the fine. But not me. I went to the HOA board, contested the fine, and won. From that point on, Queen Karen made it her personal mission to destroy me. She would whine and fuss about every little thing. I fought what I could, but I did end up paying for some of it. She also went after my tenants, which made things worse for me. I had to sit down with my friends one night to discuss the problem. When I parked my car, Queen Karen came over in her robe and said I have to park somewhere else. I did because I didn't want to start anything. We see her go back into her house and embrace a man that isn't her husband. We were being noisy and we came to the conclusion that she was cheating on her husband. Spoiler alert, she was. My friends and I told Queen Karen's husband. I'm sure he did some investigation because 3 months later, they divorced and he was moving his stuff out. Now, gossip said that Queen Karen got nothing because she was the one that cheated and she didn't have a job. So she wasn't entitled to the money. From this point on, Queen Karen had a massive decline in the quality of life that she had. She sold her car and got a cheaper one, and she adopted different dressing habits. But even after the divorce, she never got a job and she was still living somewhat better than everyone else. Fast forward to 1986, in February. Queen Karen and the HOA had been giving out fines for very obscure things and increased monthly dues. Having trash cans out a couple hours early or after the trash man left would result in a fine. Targeting people that had older or dirty cars, and goes on and on. Me and the other people in the community, we were sick of the crap that she and the HOA were pulling. So, at the next meeting, we made our voices our concerns. Queen Karen said that the community had been falling behind on repairs and that the dues and the increase in fines were necessary, especially if people weren't maintaining their own property. She said that it was in the yearly budget report and that we should have read it. The other peed-off residents and I go and we read the statement. Now, none of us read it because we take it as a junk mail and disregard it. But we read the whole statement, cover to cover. Queen had increased the HOA budget 15%, and where that extra money was going remained unknown. We went over to her house the next day and demanded to know where the extra money was being spent. But she refused several times. She closed the door and went back to watching TV. We're filing a joint lawsuit to find out where the money was going, and in June, we found out. Cue the revenge. Queen Karen was living off HOA fines and dues. The increase is because she was running out of money. She still didn't have a job, so she embezzled from the HOA so she wouldn't have to get a job. She gets busted. We call the police for her embezzling the money. She was charged with fraud and extortion. The neighbors and I filed a joint lawsuit against Karen to get reimbursement as well. Because she had no money, she had to mortgage her house to pay us all. She later went to federal prison for 6 years with no parole. Because she went away, no one was paying on her house. The bank foreclosed on it, and it was bought by someone else. So when she got out in 1992, she was homeless. Honestly, the majority of us didn't want to ruin her life like this. Had she toned down the excessive fines, we would have let her be. But she had to double down and steal from us because she didn't want to get a job like everyone else. HOA yells at me for training guide dog and grilling, then loses position on board. Posted by Judas697734. To start the story, some background you need to know about me. I volunteer to train and race service dogs. My fiance says clearly I have a look that says I am weak and a pushover. I have constant encounters with Karens, who are just not ready for my responses when they engage me. I've been in the military for 17 years when this happened, and I was responsible for managing over 130 service members. I'm anything but a pushover. I work with civilians, so I have cultivated a polite exterior because I was counseled for looking unapproachable and scary to civilian counterparts. The story, as I said, I raise service animals, so I fall under the ADA when it comes to regulations on where and what I can do with my puppy. We'll call him O. O is an amazingly behaved black lab of 6 months. I've cultivated a level of trust and obedience where I can leave him in a sit with other dogs around so long as I am in eyesight. He will stay. I have raised a few pups by then, and I would never have done that with them, but O is amazing, and I can't wait to get him back after his tour of duty, helping Mrs. C be independent. I meet the HOA Karen one Saturday. Me, my fiance, and O were going to head on a road trip to visit my fiance's parents. In our preparation, the last on the list is always getting the kids to use the bathroom before a long trip. So we head out, but O gets busy and I grab a bag to clean it up. I put him in a sit-stay and hand the leash to my girl, and I start walking to the trash can. It's about 100 feet from where he went. I have a clear line of sight to the dog, and he is sitting pretty and alert and watching me intently for a hand cue or voice command. As I am walking, I hear a womanly screech. I don't quite make it out, but it sounds angry. I ignore it and keep walking to the dumpster deposit with my waste bag, and I turn around to head back to my 2 favorite people. It is then I make eye contact with the HOA Karen. Karen from here on out. She's your typical Karen, not an inch over 5 feet and has the same circumference. The short chopped hair that says, "I'm the manager now." She looks me in the eyes, and I finally listen to her shrill scream of, "Your dog must be on a leash and in your hand. My county state law says so. I will call the cops." Now, I don't do ignorant, and respect given is respect earned. I was willing to try and de-escalate. My fiance owns the condo and is super non-confrontational. So for her, I tried to bring it back down to civil levels of discussion. In a polite but firm voice, I asked if she even looked over at the dog before she started yelling at me. She just bellows like a banshee again, and I repeat. This back and forth happens 3 or 4 times. Me, calm, her escalating in pitch and volume. At this point, she hasn't given respect, so none is required to be given back. I break out my "you done messed up" NCO to junior voice. It is loud, firm, and clearly states that I'm done with your BS, lady. I clearly tell her if she would have taken 2 seconds to look, she would see the dog is sitting on a leash in someone's hands. She stops bellowing at me, looks, and turns a bit red in the face, and then mustered, "You could just say, thank you," which I curtly reply, "Shut the F up and get out of my face." She waddled quickly off, tail tucked into the condo door. My next meeting with her was when I was grilling. The HOA states no charcoal grills and no smoking or barbecue. I was born in the north, but as a military brat, moved to the south since I was 2. There is a difference between barbecuing and grilling. Barbecue is 12 plus hours with coals of hardwood or wood smoking. Grilling is cooking meat on a grill instead of the stove. The HOA put out a reminder, no barbecuing on the premises and no coals. So I was like, awesome, get a small propane grill. It's not barbecue, but it's better than nothing. So I was out grilling and I hear the banshee cry, all too familiar now. Again, she didn't come up to me and talk, she just started screaming. So I looked her right in the eye and with the same firm voice, shut the heck up and go away. If you say one more word, I'll be the one calling the cops for harassment by an HOA member. She sputtered something about no grilling or open flames, and I told her to mess off, show me in writing, and by someone other than her. She waddled off, and then I was approached by the HOA president with the HOA bylaws and sat to read them, during which my fiance started a conversation with them about another issue we were having with them. She was in the middle of having the state attorney's office ask some questions about activities that they were trying to force her into paying for. It wasn't going well for the HOA, and she took this opportunity to introduce herself. While she may be non-confrontational when it comes to small things, she will stand up for herself when it comes to it. Her introducing herself changed everyone's tone and they became oh so polite. Karen tried to play the victim to her and say that I was mean and could use some manners when engaging with people. I love my soon-to-be wife, and she let her paint her tale of how she was the victim. When she finished, she looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You know, I was the one holding the leash and I was standing right here when he was grilling. So, no, you got the same respect you gave." She paled and faded to the back, and that's when the president of the HOA stepped in and told me that I can't have the grill and that I can be fined and I needed to follow the rules of the HOA, or the next time, he'll be the one calling the cops. Well, President, roger that. It is my job to enforce regulations in the military. I spend hours reading instructions. Nothing pleases me more than when I can shove the black and white in an a-hole's face at work to get my guys what they are owed, or to force them to do the job right. So, you want me to follow the rules? Copy that, buddy. So I began my research, and I found a few interesting things. 1. No HOA bylaw can be enforced if it is not the state database. 2. This particular HOA's bylaws were last updated in 1994, and it was 2016. 3. They state that they follow my county's fire code, which follows NFPA. 4. Finally, the gem, the exact latitude and longitude coordinates of the HOA's property lines. So, I get a login for the state's database and print the HOA bylaws. I print the NFPA, which states in a multifamily home, you can store propane tanks no bigger than 2.7 liters, but they can total no more than 5.4 liters cumulatively. I go to Lowe's, get a rope tape measurer and stakes. I pull up Google Maps and mark the HOA boundary line on it. Lo and behold, what do I find? A drainage ditch that is city property not 10 feet from where I was grilling. So, I take my coordinates, my stakes, and go carefully mark off the section of city property. Now for the revenge. I call the city and county fire departments and request a permit to grill on said city property. They said, go for it. I didn't need a permit for it. No one would care. I insisted and they said, it's my $50. They issued an event and open flame. So with both permits, it was $100, but I got permission from the city to grill there for 6 months. The next day at 0700 hours, or 7 o'clock in the morning, I went to set up. I'm carefully measuring so I was at least 3 feet into the city property. Set up my cooler with enough meat and beer to grill till doomsday. Then waited for the fireworks. It didn't take long for Karen to come screaming at me. I mean, I was 10 feet from the community pool and 3 feet from the sidewalk gazebo that led to the pool. I just hit record on my phone and politely told her that she has no need to yell and I am breaking no laws. She kept screaming about no grilling and how she is tired of me and she's going to get me arrested and kicked out if it's the last thing she does. She hasn't liked me since she saw me and has just been waiting to get me kicked out. That now she knows which condo is mine, it's just a matter of time till she finds something. On and on. I guess me being polite and showing zero fear was ticking her off. She tried to come and take my stuff. Big no-no. As she reached for my cooler, I broke out my NCO voice and told her that if she so much as brushes a finger against my property, I would remove the offending body part, with force if necessary. This sent her scurrying off again. About 20 minutes later, I see 2 cop cars pull up and Mr. HOA President himself. He is all chummy with the cops, and as they approach, I hear him say, "Yup, same guy. I already told him once before he can't grill on the HOA grounds." He comes to a stop about 10 feet from me. One cop stays with him, and the other keeps walking up to me. I have a crap-eating grin on my face. I can hardly wait for the conversation to happen. The cop is slightly off-put by my joyous face and slight giggle when I ask what seems to be the problem, officer. I get informed that I am in violation of the bylaws and have been warned once already, and I am going to receive a ticket for disturbing the peace for threatening the HOA when they were trying to enforce the rules, ticket for an illegal open flame, ticket for illegal storage of flammable substances, and on and on. The last was, if I didn't pack up, I would be arrested and removed. Now that he was done, I first handed him my permit from the city to grill. He took it, walked back to the president, and they discussed it for a moment, and then returned. Says, you can't get a permit from the city to grill on private property. I then showed him the coordinates for the HOA and the Google Maps gridded drawing and my current GPS location. Mind you, I'm smiling, handing sheet after sheet to him because the grid was not all on one sheet and had addendums. Took about 4 minutes to explain to him. As I was about to hand him more, he held up a hand to stop me. He then asked how long I had planned this with a smirk. I told him about a week, and he gave me a look of disbelief but moved on. He then asked me if I had threatened Karen. I just played back the recording to him, and then at the end he said nothing seems out of place here, you're free to go. I stopped him and asked if I could file a complaint for HOA harassment through him. He said no, that the city clerk office is the correct place, but he would document harassment by the 2 of them and file the report for me. In my state, it's illegal to be harassed by the HOA. It comes with jail of a few months, fines as high as $5,000, and immediate removal from the board, and the possibility of recovery of damages. I settled for them both being removed from the board instead of filing a complaint. I wave to Karen every day that I grill or show her my leash if I had O. Aw man, there's nothing greater than ProRevenge in which you do your research and set them in their place. By the way, for every new subscriber that comes to this channel, 1 Karen gets put in her place. So if you like these stories and you want to help the fight against Karens, please do your part and subscribe to the channel. The world and mankind will thank you. Oh, that was fun. Never mess with the grannies. Pro dog crap revenge with karma. Posted by Kookabannis. This is a story from the distant past when I was a kid. Early 80s Australia. My family lived in suburban Townsville then. We had a fairly tight-knit community on our street and all generally got along well. Our neighbor on the right side was a lovely old lady. I have no idea what her name was, but us kids all called her Gran. She was a tough old bird, lived in the bush all her life, and had a real no-nonsense attitude. On our left side was a block of 2 flats with tenants that seemed to come and go all the time. At this particular time, there was a middle-aged woman and her 2 kids. This woman, as I recall, was a bit of a witch and had a real better-than-you attitude. No idea what her name was, but we'll refer to her as Karen, because it fits. Now, Gran loved her garden and was always working in it. She grew beautiful flowers. Her garden was always kept in perfect condition and was essentially what kept her going in her old age. The local kids were welcome in her garden, just as long as we did not make a mess. Karen, on the other hand, loved her dog. It was some poodle cross thing and an ugly mutt in my opinion. Unlike the rest of our dogs, it was not allowed to roam the streets and play with the kids, but was kept inside except for the daily walk each morning on a leash. I bet you can see where this is heading. One morning, we heard sounds of an argument coming from Gran's front yard. Apparently, Karen had decided to help herself to some of Gran's flowers while walking the dog. When told off by Gran, she decided to insult Gran's garden, which was a very bad mistake. So the two exchanged words before Karen stalked off. We thought that was that, until Gran started to find dog crap in her yard every day. Every day. As most of our dogs roam the street, she could not say it was happening deliberately, just that it was strange that the dogs had avoided the place until now. Then we find out that Karen has changed her routine and was walking her dog at dawn each day. My dad spotted her as he was going to work, and of course, Karen was using the opportunity to have her dog take a dump on Gran's lawn. When Gran found out, she was furious. I was at school at the time, so I did not see it, but Mom recounted the events. Apparently, Gran had taken a garden trowel of dog crap and gone over to Karen's door where she had told Karen that she would rub your face in the next dog crap I see on the lawn. Karen responded with a tirade of abuse and then slammed the door before Gran threw the crap at her. So the stage is set. On to Act 2. Scene: early Saturday morning. We were woken by screams at daybreak. It sounded like there was an almighty fight happening at Gran's place. All the neighbors rushed out to the most amazing scene ever. In Gran's front yard, on the lawn, lay Karen face down with Gran perched astride her back. One hand on the back of Karen's neck, and the other hand with a firm grip on Karen's hair as she rubbed her face back and forth through a nice fresh dog crap. Karen was screaming bloody murder between gasping for breath and spitting out grass and crap. Gran was shouting, "I warned you, I bloody warned you, you stupid witch." So it turns out the cunning old girl knew Karen was too stupid to take a warning, so she had got up early so she could lay in wait and then ambush Karen in the garden. Karen was never the same again. She moved out in less than a week. The best laugh I think I ever had. Never mess with the grannies, folks. Me and Karen, a love story, posted by unique username 504. Just kidding, Karen is a total witch, but buckle up because here is my novel. My husband and I are in our late 30s and child-free. Some people on child-free said I should post here too, so enjoy the saga. My husband and I had been saving up for almost a decade to move to a tropical paradise. About 2 years ago, we bit the bullet and moved to our dream location. Housing here is super expensive, like Hawaii prices, so all we could afford was half of a duplex. It is beautiful and on the water with places for our boat. Unfortunately, Karen, Billy Bob, the boyfriend, and her 3 gremlins live in the other unit. Set up. There is some period of time we just went for a week here and there, but we live here full time now. The entire duplex was owned by an older gentleman who rented out both sides. The sides do not match at all. One side is a 5-bedroom, 3-bath. The other side of the duplex is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. We bought the 5-bedroom. On our side of the property, we have 90% of the backyard, a gazebo, and dockage, about 150 feet since it is on a corner. The other side has a small backyard, patio, and maybe 15 feet of dockage. The rental leases say the renters are entitled to their specific backyards, but there were no fences or anything, so all the renters shared the entire backyard. After we bought the house, Karen immediately tried to throw her weight around that they expected to continue with that privilege. I told her if she asked politely, we would try to accommodate her. She thought this meant she could use our backyard whenever she wanted. Party incident. One day, my husband and I are enjoying some drinks outside when a delivery truck shows to set up a giant blow-up thing in our backyard. I asked Karen what the heck she thought she was doing, and she said it was her kid's birthday. Then she had the gall to say it was a family and friends only event, so we had to stay inside our house. Not wanting to be a total a-hole and ruin some little girl's birthday, I told Karen after this she had no access to our backyard, period. Karen shrugged and kept setting up for the party. During the party, a drunk adult wandered into our house, which shocked us all. I said, Karen's house is the other side, and he said, oh, Karen said she owned the whole property and to use whichever bathroom was available. I directed him to Karen's bathroom, and soon after, she came storming into our house, screaming about how dare we make her look bad to her friends, and how selfish we are we couldn't even spare one bathroom. She said we didn't deserve all this space with just us. I told Karen to get the heck out of my house or I would be calling the cops. She finally left and the party wrapped up shortly after. The backyard remodel. After the party incident, we decided we need to clearly define the backyard and build a fence. While we were spending the money, we decided to update the patio, put in a fire pit, and an outdoor kitchen. While the contractor was on site, nosy Karen had to come investigate. Since the fence would be the last thing built, I was vague and just stuck to telling her about the patio update. You could see her face light up because, of course, in her mind, what's ours is hers. When the workers started on the fence, Karen came out screaming for the work to stop. I went outside and told the workers to keep working and told Karen to butt out. Of course, in true Karen fashion, she called the cops. What happened next was hilarity on my part after explaining to the cop that we were building a fence on our property and the landlord, of which Karen was not, knew about it. When the cop gave Karen a stern lecture, I thought her head was going to explode. She went back into her house and slammed the sliding door so hard it sounded like something cracked. We got our fence, and I thought that would be it in the end, but of course not. The boat incident. One day, Billy Bob entered the picture, and he was as much a terrible neighbor as Karen. He would throw cigarette butts and empty beer cans over our fence for, quote, disrespecting his woman. I didn't know Paradise had trailer trash, but Billy Bob is the epitome of that stereotype. Billy Bob has a boat, a 30-foot fishing boat to be precise, and of course, that side of the duplex only has 15 feet of dockage. Since we have so much dockage and only one boat, we rent out the other dockage spots as month to month. People come and go, so if we don't receive rent from them by the end of the month and the boat disappears, well, we think nothing of it. We had a renter who tied up their boat on the property line, but Billy Bob wanted to park his boat and needed that space. Karen and Billy Bob posed as us because we were out of town and told the renters to be gone at the end of the month and then parked Billy Bob's boat on the dock edge. I only found out about it weeks later because the renter left a nasty review on the rental site we used. They said we were rude and went back on the verbal agreement to let them stay for 3 more months. I was like, what the heck is all of this? After a phone call, I quickly put 2 and 2 together. I called the cops, who told Karen and Billy Bob they need to move their boat or it would be towed, well, the equivalent of it anyway. Karen and Billy Bob started screaming that the boat is fully on their property, it isn't, and then changed to no one can own the water, true but a seawall is deeded, that we are liars, and at some point Billy Bob punched a cop and went to jail. I felt bad for the cops, so I took them all snacks the next day with a note apologizing for the neighbor drama. I ended up winning my small claim suit against them for lost rental income, but of course I haven't seen a dime. I eventually convinced the dockage renters to come back and gave them a few months free as compensation. Final revenge. If you made it this far, congratulations. Get ready for juicy justice. So, with the collapsing market, we were trying to figure out what to do with our savings when a perfect opportunity opened up. The landlord who owned both properties was in desperate need of some cash, and he was tired of managing the property from 2,000 miles away, because of course Karen is a Karen, and called him weekly for every little thing. His only stipulation was that we let the poor single mom who has been his renter for 8 years finish her lease, which is up in July. Since we just have money we were trying to reinvest, and because now we get to control our neighbors, heck yeah, we jumped on that. Since we didn't need a realtor or a mortgage, and an inspection had been done just a year ago for the old landlord to refinance, everything closed in just under 2 weeks. Karen was aware of a change of ownership. We registered the property under an LLC, but she didn't know who until 8 days ago. I went over to Karen's house and knocked on the door. Karen answered with a, "What the heck do you want, jerk?" I smiled, handed her our landlord information, and sweetly reminded her rent was due by Friday, but she could just hand me the check if that was easier. I've always heard descriptions of people's faces turning white, but this was the first time I've actually seen it. I told Karen that we are honoring her lease until the end of July, but afterwards she had better make plans to move because we intend to remodel it before these next tenants move in. By which, edit. A lot of people misunderstood the beginning. Let's call our side of the duplex Duplex OP, and the other duplex is Duplex Karen. We purchased Duplex OP. After we bought it, Duplex OP was no longer a rental. Both Duplex OP and Karen were for sale independently, but we only had the money to buy Duplex OP. Duplex Karen is still a rental because it has never sold. Now we own both Duplex OP and Karen. Now, Duplex Karen is still a rental, and OP is still not a rental. When we made property improvements to OP, it was ours and not a rental. Update number 1. Not much to update, folks. Karen and the family's lease isn't up until the end of July. Rent has been paid on time. As far as I know, she doesn't have a new place lined up. We've served her 30-day notice and we will not be renewing the lease. We also offered in writing that we will prorate July and waive the termination fee if they want to leave before the end of the lease. Beyond the near weekly loud parties and having to call the police because the kids were throwing lit fireworks at our boat, not much beyond the norm. Update number 2, August 2020. Long story short, Karen and the family is still in the place and not paying any rent. They were served with eviction, but due to the pandemic stuff, we can't actually do anything about it. At least Karen and Billy Bob had a giant fight, which ended up in him being arrested and he hasn't returned. I've been told by our lawyer, once some laws are changed or removed in September, we can have the police escort them off the property that day, since we've already filed the eviction. It's just a crap show right now. Karen is being extra smug. She tried to push her bounds and kept coming over to our property. A talk with the cops set her straight, but she's playing music loud and just tossing her trash everywhere. We really wanted to move our elderly parents in after a quick remodel because Dad needs shoulder surgery badly and Mom now needs a walker. They need more care and it's getting harder driving 2 hours a day to do that. Our parents want their own space though, and they won't live on our side with us. My husband and I are trying not to be angry and make things worse with Karen, but we are both exhausted. Things just suck. Update number 3, December 2020. Life is weird. Karen is still here. Since we couldn't evict her, my partner went to stay with their parents for a few months so the in-laws could get the surgery and care that they needed. They're doing better now, which is great. Here's the weird part though. In October, Karen's mother, Susan, came to live with her since Susan's landlord chose not to renew her lease. Susan is an angel. Susan was mortified at Karen's and the kids' behavior. Susan is a tough one and has been cleaning house, both figuratively and literally. The kids are so much better behaved, and Karen stomps around like a sullen child. Susan and I share drinks every few days in the backyard. We bake together too every weekend. For Thanksgiving and Christmas, since no one was traveling for the holidays, we made a big feast and set it up outside with some backyard games. It was a great time, and even Karen was being pleasant. I tried to tell Susan not to worry about rent until they find another place, but she insisted on paying. I lied about how much the rent was, so it's only a half payment, but it just covers the taxes and insurance. We drew up another lease that's month to month. Susan wants to move back home at some point and take her daughter with her. Karen, I think, is ready for a change too, but obviously with the pandemic, it might take some time. It's pretty pleasant right now though, so I'm in no hurry for them to leave. Wow, I did not expect that ending with the updates. I thought we had Colossal Karen over here, and then Susan comes in. She's not Karen 2.0. She's awesome. And then Karen gets pleasant and gets ready to leave. Hey, OP, I hope that everything works out for you because they look like they're on their way out of here. After months of putting up with my roommate from hell, I got the revenge of a lifetime and screwed her over out of a ton of money and got her to pay rent, and life has never been sweeter. Posted by Let the Right One In. This story takes place a couple of years back. During college, I lived with several roommates. All of them were nice and we got along well. Except for this one witch. Let's call her Karen. If Satan and Hitler had a child, and that child had a child with Stalin and Cruella de Vil, well, that'd be Karen for you. She is a loud-mouthed, stupid, egocentric witch who has a face that scares the crap out of a toilet. She would never clean up after herself. She would always leave her plates and things at the spot where she last used them. I have lost counts of how many times I caught her stealing my clothes without asking. And if you so much as touch her clothes, she loses her crap on you. Or her drinking our lactose intolerant roommate's almond milk, and anytime we confronted her for drinking it, she would shrug and say, "I only had a sip, stop being so stingy." She plays her music loud at night, invites strangers without giving any heads up, and a time or two, she didn't pay rent even though her parents are filthy rich, and she's wearing Gucci and Prada stuff. Karen also lies about everything, even things that are not worth lying about. Like, if she woke up at 7 and you ask her, she'll lie through her teeth and say she rose when the sun rose because she's a natural. P.S. This is actually something I heard her say to her parents while she was Skyping them. So cringy, but who says that? But I digress. Months we have put up with her. But of course, we tried to get other roommates, but unfortunately, when we all moved in and everything, all the documents and contracts were done in her name, so kicking her out would require a lot of effort, and most of us were busy with school and work when life happens. So we ignore it as much as we can and try to move on. We are all now seniors and in our final semesters, meaning graduation was coming, and Karen is planning a backpack trip across Europe with her friends as a graduation gift to herself. This is important, so remember this. One of our roommates and my closest friend, Sasha, had a crush on a guy that lives down the hall. Anytime the two of them are together, Sasha and the guy keep giving each other googly eyes and blushing faces. It was so cute. Sasha is a verbal autistic person and has never dated anyone because she has a hard time with socializing and understanding social cues and subtlety, which, let's face it, that is the core of dating, especially flirting. But with a lot of encouragement from me and the final roommate, Lola, we got her to ask him out. He said yes. She was so happy, you guys. She flew back into the apartment and did an hour of a happy dance with her arms flailing about and a crap-eating grin on her face. Needless to say, we were all so happy. Karen caught wind of this, and it just so happens at that time she was having relationship problems. I guess her boyfriend finally realized he's dating human garbage. Not one to be outshined, Karen, behind all of our backs, went to the guy's place and spun lies about Sasha, saying she is a serial cheater and even made a fake account for Sasha's so-called boyfriend. The guy never called Sasha, and eventually, weeks passed by and he told us why, but by then, Sasha felt like the damage was done and lost interest in him. I was freaking furious. This level of jerk and bloody pettiness is the straw that finally broke the camel's back, and I vowed I wouldn't leave until I served my slice of justice. Here's another character that you must know about, Professor C. His wife, 2 years ago, was in a horrible car accident and, as a result, is in a wheelchair. This is especially problematic because she was a stay-at-home mom that took care of their 2 special needs kids, and they have a toddler at home. Home life is a mess for him. I mean, he's running ragged between working and single-handedly is taking care of the family. The university took pity and also feared that the workload would see one of their best and most beloved teachers leave the school. So they struck a deal with him to help him out. In all of his classes, there will be quizzes and midterms. This doesn't change. But assignments that you submit and that he corrects at the end of the year, this is important because our university has a zero tolerance on professors that don't constantly update the students' coursework so that the students have a chance to improve their grades. Karen, the lazy and stupid witch she is somehow skating through his assignments, even though they require a ton of research and writing. I accidentally learned that one of her older friends told her that she only needs to submit the paper on its due date and to only write the first 3 pages and use a paraphrase tool for the rest of the paper, so the plagiarism software won't detect it and would think it's original material. And when the end of the year comes, submit a hard copy, but with the first pages being her actual work and the rest being completely plagiarized professional work. Professor C won't know because the likelihood a man as busy as him thoroughly checking the work of 120 plus students is pretty low. I grinned. A plan was beginning to formulate in my head. Oh, sweet mother, she is going down. All semester long, I let her do this for all of the 7 papers, one of them which is a term paper that has 20% on it alone. All the while, I spied and gathered all of her passcodes, social media, her student ID, everything. The end of the year came, and I compiled all of her assignments, both the original one with the paraphrasing tools that she used to circumvent plagiarism, and the one that she finally handed in. And I even made photos of side-to-side comparisons of the assignments. This is a good start, but not enough. So, one day, I was chilling at the living room, I opened a conversation about relationships. Karen is two-timing her new boyfriend and is sleeping with some other person. So, I asked her questions like, "Don't you feel guilty for cheating? And you do realize this is wrong." Now, I even paraphrase my words in a way that is vague, but also clear. For example, I would say, "It's not fair. So many people work so hard every day to be successful, and you're here cheating and lying your way to success." Karen, narcissistic as heck, would respond with snippets of "I don't care" and how she isn't cheating, she's only having fun, and that everyone does it, so why not her too? This is too good to be true. Even her answers are vague. It's like God put his hand on my shoulder, looked me right in the eyes, and said, "Bury her." And I'd be darned if I didn't. As you probably guessed it by now, I was recording everything. The recording, plus the photos and her assignments, were more than enough evidence. I sent an anonymous email to the professor, and I tell the girls so that they can prep for the crap storm that's coming. 3 weeks later, results are out. She failed and lost her crap. She was screaming, crying, wailing. What a sight to see. You best believe that the girls and I were laughing. She tried to talk to the professor, but he was not having it. She cried and begged for a second chance, but he said a hard no. So now she has two options. She goes ahead and doesn't graduate with us and takes on a whole nother semester for one measly course, or take summer school and cancel her trip to Europe, which, mind you, she spent a ton on, something like $13,000. And I know it could have been much cheaper, but Princess Karen only wanted the best. The next couple of weeks, she spent sleepless nights because she was calling and canceling all the reservations she made, trying to get her money back, but being really out for blood that day because the cancellation was so close to some of her trip, most places refused to refund, or some charged her cancellation fees. She only managed to scrap $5.5K, $5,500 back together, losing $7,500. Ouch. It's not over. Having evidence that I, with earned gusto, told her that she was going to pay back all of the bills till we moved out, which was in 2 months, pay back for all the time she was late on payment or defaulted, and she would, from now on, do her part of the house chores, or else I'm going to send it all to the admin and the faculty dean, and she will for sure be kicked out, and all those university years will have been for nothing. She hated it. She threw tantrums and cussed me out, but my goodness if she didn't do what she's told. She cleaned her stuff, apologized to Sasha for what she did, and I forced her to come clean to her boyfriend. I don't know the guy, but the few times I met him, he was super sweet to us, and I felt bad for the guy. I watched her actually do the dishes for the first time in like years. It was amazing, and I don't regret it one bit. In fact, anytime I feel sad now as an adult, I kick back my feet and reminisce, and a slow crap-eating grin draws itself upon my face. Woman damages my mom's car and blames my mom. Her corrupt cop boyfriend covers it up and ruins both of their reputations. Posted by Alex56789101. For some background, I live in a predominantly white suburban town in New Jersey, and my family is Asian. Although the town is alright for the most part, it's not really a secret that some of the townspeople are pretty racist. One of our neighbors, let's call him Anthony, is a retired police captain from another town, but he's friends with my town's police chief. My mother is a first-generation immigrant, and although she's fluent in English, she still has a pretty thick Asian accent. A couple of years ago, my mom went to visit one of her friends on the other side of town. My mom had parallel parked directly in front of her friend's house, which is at the bottom of a small hill. As she was leaving, a woman driving a Jeep Wrangler with her children was driving down the small hill, but she was still a decent distance back, so my mom pulled out of her spot. The road they were on was really wide, with enough space to fit 5 cars next to each other, and about 40 feet ahead was a stop sign. My mom at this point was already in the middle of the road, fully out of the parking spot, and had gotten about 10 feet when the woman driving the Jeep suddenly came up from behind my mom's car and cut directly in front of her, crossing a double yellow line to do so. Because of the angle she cut off my mom at, the Jeep's rear wheel ended up ripping off my mom's front bumper. My mom naturally immediately stopped, and the woman got out of her car after straightening it out on the road. As soon as she stepped out of her car, this woman, we'll call her Karen, immediately starts cursing my mom out at the top of her lungs. Karen told my mom to call the police, but my mom told her that her phone had died. My mom's friend and her son, as well as the neighbor, came out of the house after hearing the commotion to see what had happened. The neighbor, an elderly man, asked what happened, and Karen yelled, "Are you effing blind? An effing accident happened. Go call the police. I need to call my boyfriend." The son had taken a law class in college, so he offered to take a bunch of pictures of the scene of the accident and send them to my mom later. This becomes super important later. The neighbor calls the police, but Karen's boyfriend arrives at the scene first. When the cop, let's call him Kenny, finally arrives, he asks my mom what happened, and just as my mom had just started saying her side of the story, the cop says, "Wait just a minute," and walks over to the boyfriend. As it turns out, the boyfriend, we'll call him Sam, was a cop in the town who was pretty popular with the kids in the middle schools since he would occasionally visit to talk about things like DARE and other things in assemblies. Sam was off duty at the time, so he was able to come over when Karen called him. As soon as Kenny saw his bud Sam, he immediately went to go talk with him rather than with my mom or with Karen. They discussed it for a little while and afterwards sent everyone on their way. My mom tried to talk to Kenny before he left, but Kenny just brushed it off and said he got the details he needed and that my mom would be able to get the police report in about a week or two. When my mom receives a police report, she saw it said that she pulled out without using her blinkers suddenly and hit Karen's car. On top of that, Karen was expecting for my mom's insurance to pay for the damage done to her rear wheel. My mom went to my neighbor Anthony to ask what she should do about the report since it was clearly wrong. Anthony was furious and told her that she should go to the police station and ask to see the chief, and if they ask why she needs to see him, she should tell them that it's because she wants to file an internal complaint. That day, my mom takes the photographs sent to her by the son and goes to the police station and asks the person working the front desk to see the chief. The cop says that she could not just walk in and ask for the chief, so my mom responds, "Okay, so where should I go to file an internal complaint?" And the cop immediately straightens up and says, "Right here, come with me." He leads her into the back. The deputy chief steps into the room and started recording the conversation. Since the chief was out, my mom presented all of the evidence to him instead. After presenting the evidence to show that it was in fact Karen that hit her instead of the other way around, my mom also says that she would like to file a corruption complaint against both Kenny and Sam. Kenny clearly did not do his job properly since he did not properly ask the actual people involved in the accident and did not even note the fact that there were 2 passengers in Karen's car in the report. Even Karen later admitted to an investigator that Kenny never once spoke to her. My mom even threw in the racist card for good measure, saying that maybe Kenny wouldn't listen to her and brushed her off because of her thick Asian accent. Sam, meanwhile, had interfered with the investigation despite not being at the scene of the crime during the time of the accident. The deputy chief says he will start an internal investigation and will see if anything needs to be done. Meanwhile, my mom also filed a claim to her insurance and presented the evidence to them too, and her insurance decides that since the accident, in their eyes, was clearly not her fault, they weren't going to pay Karen a penny, and that they would contact Karen's insurance to pay my mom instead. A lot of internal bureaucratic investigational BS happens, including interviews with Karen, my mom's friend, and the friend's neighbor. About a month passed and an officer comes to our house to tell my mom that Kenny had been punished, but there was not enough evidence to punish Sam, and he just wanted to know if there were any other concerns that she had. Since Karen seemingly had not done anything to further warrant any action and the damage to the car was paid for, my mom said that there was nothing else. This is the fun part. 3 days after the officer came to our door, a letter came in the mail for a court hearing. Turns out, Karen decided to file 3 tickets about my mom just 1 day before the statute of limitations. Apparently in New Jersey, citizens are allowed to file complaints about other citizens breaking the law, a thing that our family had never heard of before until this happened, and because of how late she filed these complaints, by the time we received them in the mail, we could not even counter-complain, and the only options were to pay the fine or go to court. We assumed that Karen learned about being able to file complaint from Sam, because no crap, and that the only reason she was willing to go this far is because she heard my mom had a super thick Asian accent and assumed that my mom wouldn't know what to do about the tickets and would just pay up. What she didn't count on was the fact that my mom is actually really aggressive with an absolutely massive network of people that she knows. Within a day, my mom hired a lawyer to fight the case, and they immediately asked to change the court from the small court in our town to one of the large courts a couple towns away. The logic was that if she fought the case in our town, my mom would be at a disadvantage since her case was essentially going against our town's beloved police force. But by putting it in a different town, the playing field would be even. Additionally, while my mom worked from home in her own business, Karen had a full-time job in town, so going to court in a different town would be a huge pain in the butt for her. The lawyer had prepared a huge amount of evidence against Karen, so there was no way she was actually going to win the case no matter what. Come the court date, Karen never showed up, so the case was thrown out. That was a pretty nice win, but what came after was even better. Since my mother and sister have a lot of friends in town, the story of Karen and Sam doing this shady bullcrap got out really fast. Soon, half the town had heard about it, and suddenly Karen and Sam went from 2 favorites in the town because of Sam's reputation to 2 of the most underhanded and nasty people. Sam stopped getting invited to school assemblies, and Karen was ostracized in her kids' school PTA. Anthony also ended up talking to the police chief in private, and we found out that although Sam was not officially punished, he was severely reprimanded by the chief. Congratulations, you've reached the end of the compilation. Check out the next Pro and Nuclear Revenge compilations here for some more sweet revenge. And be sure to comment the secret phrase below, Karen ain't Karen, because they really don't care. I'm Austin, thank you so much for watching and the support. I mean it. See you in the next video.